Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? It's Friday, and welcome to Contracting Chatter, where we talk about all things government contracting and legislation. Whew. It's been a busy week in the government, and this is a timely conversation. So if you have any questions as I'm doing my presentation, drop them in the chat. If you have any comments, drop them in the chat. Whether I see them during the presentation or I see them after, I always visit the comments and I respond to them in a timely fashion. This will be a multi-part conversation, so don't worry, I'll address everything. Today's topic is navigating the executive orders as a business, as a government contractor. And what do the executive orders mean to you as a government contractor? We're not talking about this from a political standpoint. We are talking about this as business owners, business founders, and decision makers navigating, the current what appears to be destabilization of the common norm. What I like to see this as an opportunity to disrupt what's going on. As we know, the greatest transformation or the transfer of wealth occurs during disruption. And those who understand that take the time to craft a true strategy will turn any time and ride every storm. Those who sit around and just kind of like look to the left and look to the right miss the tide every time. So let's talk about some of the things that have come out as a result of actions that are going on because of some of the actions President Trump has taken and what it can mean to government contractors. I've been paying attention to the congressional hearings and some of the things that have come out as a result of the DOGE initiative is this line item review of government spending at the Treasury Department. One is the apparent wasteful spending. What do I mean by that? Some items of spending that can be argued doesn't benefit the American people, and it's money that the American people didn't agree to. Now, somebody's saying, Luciana, what does that have to do with government contracts? All of that money was government contracts. So those government contracts are now in jeopardy. So somebody is saying government contracts are going to be halted, spending is going to be stopped, spending is going to be decreased. I'm getting ready to argue or put forth the narrative government contracting is actually going to see an uptick. It's just going to be in different ways. And if you understand that, where you can ride the tide, and let me tell you how. You're not going to see spending in concerts anymore. You're not going to see spendings in certain types of public relations spendings, which some of that spending they're talking about and you're seeing in the congressional hearings was public relations spendings. You're not going to see that type of spending anymore. Those dollars are going to be reallocated to other types of spending that better promotes this administration's priorities. So if you spend any kind of time or any time on the whitehouse.gov's website, you will understand what this administration's priorities are. And I can't stand the so I apologize for that. You will understand what the priorities are and you can take your contracting plan and make adjustments. So instead of going into, now I'm not telling you, if you're one of these people that want to take your organization's time and protest what's going on, have at it. That's on you. I'm arguing you can take the time to look at what you're doing and reshape it to offer the same or similar services and make them fit the current narrative, meet the same goals within this administration, and have the same impact. I'm going to say this again. You can take your same programs, rework them, meet the same goals within this administration, and have the same impact. Now, some of your programs probably will just have to go away because this administration just not having it. Some of your programs will need to be retweaked and reworked because this administration says we're not doing it. Some of your programs need a new focus or need a new target market or need to be retargeted because this administration says you need to retarget or you need to talk to a different demographic. However, if your goal was X anyway, you most likely was targeting the wrong market to begin with. So spend some time on whitehouse.gov, understand what they're saying, and you can ride the tide. Because no matter what you think, for the next 4 years, you have this administration. And you're going to have to learn how to ride the tide. And I'm going to say this again, nonprofits are government contractors. And if you're looking for federal grants, you need to be paying attention to what I'm saying. If you're trying to understand how to obtain federal grants, and if they actually pass the proposals that the tax deduction goes away, if you're trying to gain additional funders and this whole narrative of the feel-good warmth and fuzzies goes away, how are you going to obtain those matching dollars for those grants? You need to learn how to speak the current language. And I might even go here. It's the language that existed in the 80s. You have to speak a different language. It's no longer this, I'm going to just say it. It's no longer the fluff language. It's the substantive language of facts and numbers and results. So if you can't show the results of your program, you have to show the intended results of the program, metrics by metrics, point by point, which is why, quite frankly, a lot of the nonprofits that are being affected need to go back to the drawing board and rework their programs so that they can say, look, this is what we've been doing. This is the intended results. These are our current results. This is how we've reworked the programs. And these are the results we intended. What we got, we see the errors of our ways. And this is how we're going to receive those results we intended in the first place, but we didn't get. Sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board, and come back forward. Government contractors, sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board, say, here are my NACE codes. My contracts were housed in these departments. Due to the restructuring going on, my contracts may now be housed in these departments, and then keep going. This upheaval, this narrative that's running, some of the narrative that's running is noise. You have to rise above the noise, and sometimes you have to put in noise canceling earbuds so that you can hear the facts that's going on. Create that strategy. We are in February 7th. Create the strategy that will take you to a win. But if you're constantly filling your ear with noise, it will distract you from the ultimate win. And I'm speaking to everyone because even as veterans, sometimes we get caught up in the noise instead of sticking to the facts of the matter. Now, I picked out a few of the this administration's current initiatives, and I want to show you how you can take your strategic plan, rework it, and still go for the contracts. So if you're ready, let's go. Now, there's an executive order, and because my printer isn't printing, and quite frankly, I had a stroke a couple of years ago, so reading off of a screen just doesn't work for me all the time. There's an executive order directing the Department of Health and Human Services to give guidance to the states concerning grant and block funding for education. Now, somebody's saying, why is he doing that? There's also this big upheaval for him wanting to phase out the Department of Education. Oh my God, education is going to go away. Do you not know the Department of Education did not come into existence until October 17th, 1979? And the Department of Education was created by President Carter. Now, I said this is not a political post, but I wanted to give you a bit of history. So one president created the Department of Education. That was President Carter, October 17th, 1979, and he did it by executive order. Another president in 2025 wants to get rid of the Department of Education. Now, somebody's asking themselves the question, Luciana, how did the state fund their education initiative? Through the Department of Health and Human Services. So what President Trump is saying, we don't need the redundancy. Get rid of the Department of Education, give those core services back to the Department of Health and Human Services, and have them do what they were doing pre-1979. So if you offer as an organization any services that support the Department of Health, that support education, well, then you would just take your strategic plan, rework it to target the Department of Health and Human Services. Sub-department education. You see what I'm saying? Cut out the noise, cut out the stress. Education funding is going nowhere. It's just going back to the Department of Health and Human Services where it was pre-1979. Does that make sense? So FY 1980, they created the Department of Education. In the FY 1979 budget, it didn't exist. So should this come to pass, because it's not unconstitutional. One president created it, another president wants to get rid of it. Whatever, that's noise. Government contractors, we're rising above the noise in 2025, and we're creating a strategic plan to get to the win. We're saying we don't care about the noise. We want to serve our demographic, which is a government contract to ultimately serve our end client or our end goal, which is to affect education for our children, whichever grade level you're trying to affect. So no matter if it's the Department of Education or if it's the Department of Human and Health Services, We want the money. We want the grant. We want the contract. Whomever has it. So education, fine. Human health and human services, fine. We're rising above the noise. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So it seems like, or it appears as though, some of the executive orders are taking us back to a government that looks like it looked prior to some of the formation of departments that didn't exist pre-FY 1980. Because a lot of these departments that he wants to get rid of didn't exist before 1980 or the 1980 federal budget. Because a lot of these departments was created by President Carter. Now, somebody's saying, I thought this wasn't a political post. It isn't a political lie. I'm just educating you where it came from. One president and another president is getting rid of it. So it doesn't matter. Rise above the noise. Your strategic plan, your contracting plan, if you want to do two, do two. If you just want to do the one with a footnote of this is what we're doing, FY25, 2026, or whatever your plan is for the fiscal year for 2025, this is what the plan looks like, with a footnote saying if this department goes away, it's going to be housed here. Do that. However, rise above the noise and just know where the dollars flow. Because ultimately, the dollars will flow from the federal to the state. Rise above the noise. The money isn't going away. It's just going to a different house. That's it. That's all. It's moving from one house to the other. And no matter what, the work has to get done. Whether it's done by a federal employee or it's done by a government contractor, the work must be completed. I'm also going to go here. There's this big upheaval about the retiring of federal employees. The wise government contractor is seeing this as an opportunity to retain or obtain valuable workers that you otherwise wouldn't have access to. There's opportunity everywhere. Good morning. I'm even going here. There are opportunities for religious organizations who was quite frankly shut out by the previous administration for whatever reason, not going into that, to receive funding that was previously available, that was available, that became unavailable, that now will become available again. Ultimately, my point is this: rise above the noise. Follow the dollars. The dollars will still exist. They just may be housed differently. If you do counseling, you just may need to rename your counseling program. If your target audience is teens of a certain demographic, follow what I'm saying, but you currently have it named a certain way, just rename the program and go for the money. You're still serving that demographic. Just call it something else. I don't understand this need to fight unnecessary fights. People are picking fights over things that don't matter. You do what you pivot and move. Some fights you don't need. People are fighting fights that don't need to be fought. Because ultimately, your goal is to do X, Y, and Z. And if your program is named bananas, but they want to serve fruits, aren't bananas fruits? So why don't you name your program fruits and then target bananas while you're serving fruits? It's the same thing. As a business founder, your job is to serve your demographic, not to fight ridiculous fight because you're caught up in the noise. Rise above the noise. Put in your noise canceling earbuds. As I said, and I'm going to recap this before, because Contracting Chatter is only a 30-minute program. I changed the time to 8 o'clock from 7:30 because I realized everybody doesn't get up as early as I do. I've been up since 5:30 in the morning, and I realized everybody doesn't get up that early. But to recap, contracts are not going away. They're being rehoused and renamed. So why aren't you rehousing and renaming your programs? Some of you, that's all you need to do. Rehouse, rename. Your demographic can be served in this administration. All you have to do is rehouse and rename. Just learn. That's it. That's all. I'm going to continue this conversation next week. So follow me. If you missed the beginning of this program, you can catch the replays on the replay will be on my YouTube channel, LT&A Consulting Group. If you wish to, book a session with me, my website address is LTA Consulting Group. Reach out via email at contact@ltaconsultinggroup.com. I know people have been reaching out to me on LinkedIn. I haven't responded. I'm trying to work out some glitches on there. DM me if I haven't reached out to you yet. I have to work through those glitches over there. So unless anyone have any questions, you can support this program in one of two ways. Scan the QR code, or you can Venmo as a means of support. This is a free program where I share information on legislative information, what comes out with the legislation that benefits businesses and government contractors. I will see you next Friday as we continue the conversation on navigating the executive orders. Have an amazing weekend. Have an amazing day. I'm Luciana Turner of the LT&A Consulting Group.